Hello and welcome to Season 1, Episode 3 of Quat Pod, Question of Trust, a football fanzine related to football trusts and particular goings on at Exeter City. The amount of downloads and the follows that we're getting on various channels, we honestly can't believe it, and we're truly humbled about that. Thank you so much. We've extended the number of channels that we're available on. So we're on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Podbean, Twitter. So get involved, drop in some questions, and like, follow, subscribe, etc. You know the drill. That will help us generate, hopefully, advertising revenues, which we can then share, which is one of the objectives of the podcast. Particularly like to thank our fan in Japan, Mac. It's obviously proving a very interesting podcast and very fascinating, related to the Japanese leagues, J League, and his following of FC Tokyo. Of course, we can now reveal thanks very much to Alan Sung, former Man United player and Exeter City player, and his talk about his life in football, BBC commentating, etc. So, a rundown on the show. Mick, or City Mick, is still on his travels, which he does do, and he will come back and join us. We will give an update on the trust meeting that was held, because there was a trust meeting this Monday, just gone. We're going to have a discussion on the transfer window. But without further ado, we're going to move to our special guest. There's a 35-minute interview with him, which is truly stunning. It's a former manager, former caretaker manager. He pulled off the greatest result of the season, I personally believe, so far, in terms of Barnsley away. He's got a 50% win rate from his games. I'll let him do his talking. In terms of the club generally, getting some great results, and we appear to be very stable following the change of manager. So over to our special guest. Right, welcome back to Quat Pod. Now I said this about the last interview I did, but I'm really looking forward to this one. Last episode 2, we had Matt from Japan, and he was a massive City, well, still is a massive City fan. Over on Boxing Day, watched the team played against Portsmouth, and he did a cracking interview. But I think this one's better. So I'm going to do my normal thing of introducing the guest. See if I've got my homework right, because we're not going to talk too much about Exeter City. But I believe he started off at Sheffield Wednesday in the youth. I then think he played almost 100 games for Notts County. He then did almost similar at Scarborough. He played just under 50 games for Forest Green, 314 games on his first turnout for Torquay United. And if you haven't worked it out by now, he played at Kidderminster and Bath. I give you Kevin Nicholson. Welcome to the show. Is that about right?
It sounds a bit big time, but you're a little bit short on a few of those appearances that are sometimes on the Wikipedia stuff, they miss out one or two. So I got a perfectly round 110 appearances for Notts County, a perfectly round 100 for Scarborough, and a perfectly round 350 for Torquay. Because when I went into my second year as manager there, I needed 4 appearances to make 350, and it's amazing what you can do as manager. I ended on exactly 350.
Did you? Because I my basic maths tells me, and you probably know how many games you've done, but I think that's 600 plus games. Is that correct?
Yeah, I never fully added up where I got to total, but yeah, I was fortunate enough. I wasn't blessed with a great deal of athleticism, but I was durable and I was consistent. So I managed to get just short of 700 games, I think it was, which I'm proud of and happy with, really.
That's impressive, and that puts you into the category of players like Lewington and Shilton and
You know, I believe Liam Sercombe's played loads as well.
I was the absolute kind of the bosses of that. Obviously, Ryan Giggs, and when I was at Scarborough, I played with Neal Redfearn, who was into the 1,000. He was into the 1,000 appearance mark. So, although I was happy with where I got, there's always one or two out there that have done a bit more.
Yes, and right. So I'm going to set the scene a bit. It's Friday afternoon. I know you tried to do this interview on a Thursday afternoon, and I think that's because you maybe have a weekend off, and because obviously we've got a break from football. So I've got a question from a 13-year-old City fan, which is the first ever question for Quad Pod, I might add, because we're only on episode 3, right? And his question was, and I was sat with him on New Year's Eve prior to Oxford. He said to me, "What do they do?" It's like, what's the training week like when you've got a training week? So could you just sort of summarise what happens Monday to Friday for the benefit of him? How many hours they do on the pitch? Do you do anything inside theory, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so it's certainly evolved in the time that I've been in the game. The analysis side of things is really at the forefront of a lot of what we do now. The resources that we have to show players who they're going to come up against, how you might beat them, how you might nullify their strengths. The opportunity to show those things is greater than it's ever been. And so a normal week would be, we either have Monday or Wednesday off, depending on the build-up and what we're looking for. If we want a 4-day build-up, we'll have the Monday off, and then we'll work particularly hard on the Tuesday and the Wednesday. So that will be the physical days. There'll normally be a big area day. So Tuesday, there'll be big numbers and big areas. So as close to 11v11 as you'll get. You'll do a lot of work that's specific to our philosophy and how we want the team to play. And you'll also do a little bit that's embedded in there that'll be about who we're going to play next and how we might beat them. So that we'll drop things in. Sometimes we'll let the players know. Sometimes we'll just do the sessions with an eye on us knowing that these are the things they need to work on.
Yeah.
They will cover, on that day, they'll cover anywhere between 8 and 10K in terms of high speed, longer distance runs.
Cool.
On the next day, on the Wednesday, will be small areas and smaller numbers. So on a Tuesday, we might involve some of the under 18s players, and we'll get as many in as we can to make it as realistic as possible. On the Wednesday, we'll cut it down to smaller numbers, and there'll be a lot more accelerations and decelerations. So you'll get a physical output from it that's slightly different. You'll only cover 4 or 5K, but there'll be a lot more acceleration and deceleration stuff, which is really important for footballers because that's what the game's often made up of. Yeah. And that'll be a lot more possession-based, 1v1, 2v2, 3v3 stuff. So physically, it feels really difficult, but you don't cover as much ground as you did the day before.
Yes.
And again, the tone or the general idea of the session will be based on, 1v1 duels is something that happens in the game more than ever before. It's just how it's gone. So making sure that we are explosive, trying to get past people, and clever and strong, trying to stop the opposition. And then this will be combined with gym work that the S&C guy will do, Max, who we've got now. He'll do work in the gym with them before and after sessions. The Thursday will be a deload day, so it'll be a lot more technical-based stuff. We'll have an analysis meeting on the morning where we'll talk to the players for maybe really start talking about the team we're going to play and looking at what they can do, particularly their strengths and how we can stop them. And then on a Friday, a match prep day, you'll do some 11v11 work on who we're going to play. We'll concentrate more on how we're going to beat them rather than how we're going to stop them. Because we want the players to be thinking more about themselves and the opposition when they go out. And there'll be a little bit of fun element every day. We try and make it enjoyable. There'll be some cognitive work, but Friday there'll be some small-sided games that players love to play football, and they love it when it's competitive and sharp. So we try and leave them with that. We might work on some set plays and some other bits there. And then they go away and they get ready for Saturday. So.
Cool. And I'm going to embarrass myself slightly because we've got one thing in common. Well, no, I'm not really going to claim this in common. I am a certified FA football coach, and I used to run a couple of grassroots football teams. And just hearing what you said about what goes on in the week, bearing in mind a youth football coach probably does one session during the week if they're lucky, and then game day. It's a completely different world from what you're saying. And that involves a hell of a lot of planning, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, any coach worth their soul, really, the biggest part of what they do is the old thing used to be plan, do, review. I think we talk a bit more now about dream, plan, do, review. So really, we have a habit of doing the things that we know. So sometimes spending time thinking about different ways of doing it, different sessions, different formats is important. Yeah. But at the same time, if you're going to really improve a player, they need to be thinking about playing or just going and playing rather than thinking about the rules and the format. So you do need a level of consistency. You have to put the same thing on several times so they understand it and they can therefore go and do it and work on the things that are more relevant. So we spend a lot of time discussing, planning, looking at what's going right, what's going wrong, how we can improve, what those sessions might look like. And then after those sessions, when we've done them, we'll sit down and talk about how they could have been better, how the things that went well, the things that we could have done more or less of. And then we try and settle on a set of sessions that we can work on over a period of time to improve the players in any given area, ready to try and go and win games. And Exeter is the best club I've known for understanding the longer term ambitions of improving individuals. It's every team wants to win, every team wants 3 points, but for us to do that, if we can improve the individuals within their unit and then therefore the team, we've got a better chance of getting results over a period of time, rather than going in screaming and shouting about let's get 3 points at the weekend, because everybody wants that and the process is more important than the outcome.
Now, it's interesting you say that, because I wasn't going to do too much of this interview in Exeter City, as I know I mentioned to you before we started. Now, and you've alluded to your other football clubs. So perhaps could we just run through your story of clubs, right? And, give an insight, because we're also interested in the ownership of football clubs, because I know we're a trust fund club, and that's one of the motivations of this podcast, is to promote the good things that we're doing. So I think, what was your grassroots? How did you get into football? So did you play for a grassroots youth football team, I guess?
Yeah, so obviously when I was coming through, there was no such thing as academies. It was School of Excellence. It was grassroots and School of Excellence. So I played for a team called Mickleover All Stars. That was my first club.
Is that Derby?
Yeah. I'm a Derby lad. Mickleover Sports have become quite a established football club now. They're doing really well. John McGraw's been manager there for a few years, and they're trying to build something. And I'd love to get back and watch them. I've never been to their ground to watch a game, just because I've either been playing or managing myself. And I'd love to get back and see them, because they're doing really well. But before then, the big rivalries in Mickleover was Mickleover Jubilee and Mickleover All Stars. And I was on the All Stars team. At 12, I got scouted to go and play for Stoke City's School of Excellence, and a team called Stone Dominoes, which is based around there as well. And then I was fortunate enough when I was 14 to get into Lilleshall National School. So that was, Lilleshall was effectively the best 16 players in an age group, and you went through local trials, regional trials, and then national trials to get in. And you lived there. You had 2 years there. Lilleshall was what St George's Park is now. It's where all the injured players used to go. It's where sometimes England would train there. Lots of sports people went. And we would go to a normal comprehensive school, but we would train like a full-time footballer for the last 2 years of our school life. And it was the blueprint of what academies are now. Howard Wilkinson, a guy called Richard Hodgson, who was the technical director of our academy at Exeter for quite a while. A couple of other guys got together and they took the blueprint of Lilleshall and turned it into what everybody knows as academies now. So I was really fortunate. I suppose I got the first ever academy experience playing with the elite players at the time. My age group was Scott Parker, Francis Jeffers, Stuart Taylor, Alan Smith. So there's some good guys coming through. And,
are you still in touch with some of those guys?
I'm currently in the process of trying to sort a reunion out for the summer, which is like herding cats. So it's not the easiest thing I've ever done, but it'd be good. We've got a little group chat. Most of us kind of pop on there now and then just to give each other some abuse. But yeah, it's you tend to football tends to take you far and wide, so you don't keep in touch with as many people as you think.
Yeah, no, I know. I have to say it's similar to the industry I work in, because I work in logistics and supply chain, and I've worked in 31 countries, and like you, lived in different places of the UK doing my stuff. So, sorry, Stoke City, but then you went to Sheffield Wednesday, yeah? Is that right?
Yeah. So my first at 14, I left Stoke and I went to Sheffield Wednesday. I had a year there before I went to Lillishall, and then all of my games came through the Lillishall National School. And I was lucky enough to do like England schoolboys and that kind of stuff there.
Yeah.
And then when I left school and left Lillishall, I signed as a YTS, as it was then, for Sheffield Wednesday, and I had just over 3 years there. And unfortunately, I got there at a really bad time. So I had, again, comparing it to Exeter, I've been here for nearly 4 years, and I've had one manager in Matt Taylor, and now obviously I'm working in that realm with Gary.
Yeah.
And before that, Tisdale was here forever. And I think they've had 2 managers or 3 managers in 20-something years. At Sheffield Wednesday, I had 6 managers in 3 years, I think it was.
Wow. Who were they? Shout out to a few of them.
When I signed as a schoolboy, it was Trevor Francis. When I signed as a scholar or a YTS, it was David Pleat. And then it was Ron Atkinson, Danny Wilson, Paul Jewell, Terry Yorath, Peter Shreves for a short while. We got through a few. So the end came when Paul Jewell came in, and he wasn't a fan of mine as a player, and so I ended up leaving. I had a brief spell on non-contract at Northampton for about 2 months. I only played 6-7 games for them before I got a permanent move to Notts County. But unfortunately, Sheffield Wednesday was they were on the downward spiral. They were in the Premier League when I signed. When I left, they were in the Championship. I only played 1 game for them in the Championship. And unfortunately, they're still kind of trying to fight to recover from that in our league now.
Yes, indeed.
I had Notts County again. I signed there when we were being told there was a takeover happening and there was a load of investment coming. And within 3 months, we were in administration, and it stayed that way for, I think, 18 months.
Wow.
So, unfortunately, I'm a common denominator here, but I promise you it wasn't all my fault. I loved my time there. I met some great people. We had a couple of decent seasons. We had a great escape season where I scored last day of the season to stay up in front of about 15,000 people, and it was an amazing experience. But unfortunately, it wasn't what I'd signed up for. We all hoped that we'd be fighting at the top of the league, and that didn't materialise. The early part of my career, certainly, it worked on my resilience and kind of fighting through the tough times and trying to stick with it. I had 2 years at Scarborough. Believe it or not, things didn't go quite right off the pitch. They ended up liquidating at the end of the 2 years.
Yes.
So again, I'm starting to see a theme here that I don't want people to read into too much. But they unfortunately went under. I think, if I remember rightly, the last game of the season when they kind of finished was at Exeter, played at SGP. That was the end of my time at Scarborough. I had a year at Forest.
Was that the Championship year? I'm trying to think of the dates. 89, 90?
No, that was way before. That was 2005, 2006.
Oh, God, yeah. I'm aging you. I apologise.
Yeah, sorry. I know. I've not got a lot going on. And then I had a year at Forest Green. That was the first season at their new ground, which was brilliant. We did really quite well, considering it wasn't the Dale Vince era, so there was no money there. It was very much hand to mouth, but it was a lovely club, good people, and we did okay. And then I was lucky enough to get in what they call the England C team, so the non-league England team. And when I got in there, I got a few more phone calls, and one of them happened to be Paul Buckle, who had just left Exeter City as their player coach, under 18s manager, and he'd taken on the job at Torquay, and that's where I probably had my best time as a player from 2007 through to 2014.
Definitely consistency, because that's 50% of your games at least, isn't it?
Yeah, I say 350 games was. I loved it. You know, I came down to the southwest with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. We've since had 3 kids. I've had all of the best moments in my career and personal life really have come while I've been down here. And I had a fantastic time at Torquay, particularly the first 4 years, where it was all about fighting for promotions and playoffs and playoff finals and some really good times. It started to go, unfortunately, downhill after that.
Remind me, who were the owners at the time?
When I came in, the chairman was Alex Rowe, who
was
an excellent chairman, really, really good guy. Consortium had taken over. They put some money in. We, as far as National League teams go, we were one of the better paying clubs, and we did really well. You know, Paul Buckle was outstanding as manager to get us promoted in the second year. A lot of Exeter fans like to remind me of the 07-08 playoffs, where it all went wrong for the last 20 minutes. If you're,
you can be sure I was there. I was there that day, as you can imagine.
Well, unfortunately, I was as well. So, I mean, Wayne Carlisle still remembers and reminds me of that on a regular basis. I came in soon after I got sacked as Torquay manager. I came into Exeter just to shadow Paul Tisdale for a few days, just to see how he did things. And Wayne, I was in and around at the time, and I had the pleasure of having lunch, and both of them kind of sitting and talking about how they masterminded our downfall. And it was fascinating, really. So I had 7 years as a player there, and then a year at Kidderminster, which, again, I really enjoyed, but unfortunately they were struggling off the pitch, and I signed a 2-year contract, but I agreed to write off my second year because they were struggling. I was a bit naive, really. I assumed or hoped I would walk into another club because I'd had a good season, but I neglected to realise that not many people want to sign a 35-year-old left back. And so I was a little bit naive, probably a bit too honest, but I like to try and do things the right way, and my moral values told me that I couldn't take money from a club that had looked after me, but were on its, they were struggling. They were on its knees, really, and so I agreed to to cancel my second year. Found myself with very little interest. Went on trial to Bath City and earned a contract there. Another fantastic club, really well run, really good people. I loved playing there, but I played for 10 games, and then the Torquay job came up as manager.
Yeah.
So I went back as player manager there. That was under Dave Phillips as chairman.
Yeah.
And it was the best first job anybody could ever ask for, really. It was turmoil. It was no money, no resource, nowhere to train. But the people in charge were similar to Exeter in the way that they were fans. They just wanted the best for the club. So my remit was really just do anything you can to win games and sell players, because we need to survive and we need to stay up. Yeah. And I had an amazing time. We stayed up, the first Great Escape as it was in 2015-16 season. The second season, I lost all my players because they'd done so well at the end of it. So everybody came and offered them more money, and off they went. I learned a lot more in the second year. I never quite got it right back to the levels that it was at. But a new owner came in, and unfortunately they weren't fans of mine. So I was working under pressure from both a results point of view and the owners kind of wanting me out. And then at the start of the next season, they pulled the trigger and they got rid of me after 4 games. Which again, that's part and parcel of football, learning what that feels like. It's not fun. It teaches you a lot about yourself and a lot about the game. And it was soon after that I got a phone call from Julian Tagg and and I came in at Exeter as head of coaching, and that was 3.5 years ago now. And this football club has opened my eyes really as to how things can be run, how things can be done from a value and moral standpoint, how well it can be run from a youth and an academy, and everybody pulling in the right direction, or certainly in the same direction. It's incredibly important that that's the case. And I learned everything I could learn about the academy as the head of coaching. Started this season as the under-18s manager because I wanted to get back on the pitch more and have a team. And then obviously I think everybody knew Matt Taylor would move on at some point, but it always catches you by surprise when it happens. And then I had my kind of 3-week stint as caretaker, which I loved. I was so grateful for how the fans, when you talk like this and you talk about how long I was at Torquay, I always had a concern that I wouldn't be accepted here in the first team environment because of my time at Torquay. Although it's not a competition in the same way as, say, Plymouth, it's still a local rival, and I wasn't sure how well it'd go down. And obviously it helps when you win away at Barnsley in your first league game in charge. But
I was going to discuss that because and I'm not sure, you've undersold yourself on one of your games earlier because at Bath City. I just want to put that in. But I'm going to, your win rate's probably on Wikipedia. So we won't talk about Torquay too much because there were extenuating circumstances. But you are the Pep Guardiola of Mousehole, I believe. It says you had an 85% win rate, and at Exeter City, you've got a 50% win rate.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's probably the thing about those kind of stats is that I think my win rate at Torquay was about 33%. But those 33% were the hardest 33% of wins that you will ever get. And so I'm incredibly proud to have managed to have got that many in the circumstances that we're talking about. And that's sometimes in football, at Mousehole, it's an amazing little football club. It's like you're about 8 miles from Land's End. It's brilliantly run. It's got one of the best pitches that you'll ever play on, even in league football, never mind step 5, step 6 as we were. The remit there was that I could pick any formation and I could recruit any player that we could get hold of if we could afford them. But I had to play like Man City. So we had lads that were playing it out from the back. I was banned. The goalkeeper was banned from kicking the ball long.
Really?
So we were just, that was quite empowering to the players because my team talks every week. Well, look, I don't care if you give the ball away. I'm telling you, I'll bring you off the pitch if you go long. If you give the ball away trying to do the right things, no problem. That's on me. And it was incredibly powerful to the players. But we also had players that were better than the level. So the win rate, fantastic. And again, really proud of it and how we did it. But it should have been. I would have had to have been poor at what I did not to get a very high win rate with the players that I was working with at Mousehole. Wow. And then again, when I came in here and had my kind of 6 games at Exeter, there was a lot to take on. The first game was against Southampton under 21s, and I know that Matt Taylor was going to play a predominantly under 18 based team because he could. If they got beat 5-0 by Southampton's under 21s, nobody would raise an eyelid. When I came in, I really didn't want the first game post Matt Taylor to be Southampton's under 21s running us off the park. So we played a more mixed team. We still played a very young team, but we kept a few of the more experienced players in. And I've said in previous interviews, several of the players came to me and said, I really want to play. I want to. And I valued that. I was so grateful that that's the attitude that they had. They really wanted to make sure that we started the next stage as well as possible. So that was a good win and a good performance. Barnsley was outstanding. It was, one of the highlights of my season so far. Loved the game, loved the performance. The fact that Stano got his first goals there was incredible.
And you got your own chant based on the darts anthem, which I'm not claiming any credit for. It's nothing to do with me, but you know what fans are like. When it goes, it goes.
Yeah, so, and this is what I'm saying. I felt accepted immediately, and that was so humbling, and so I was privileged to be like that because not many football clubs would accept a rival manager in, as I was, and I've become one of their own. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And then actually, I thought we played really well away at Charlton, like really well, but we got a bit of a lesson in League One football. If you don't take your chances and you're a little bit loose at the back, you'll get hurt far more than you will in League Two. And so I came away from that game disappointed that we lost, but really upbeat. And then went going into the game against Oxford thinking, here we go, we're going to be okay. And we were awful. And we got beat, and we got beat well. And then reality hits is that right now, this is back into the first team round. We need a positive couple of results coming up. Forest Green in the Johnson's paint, great that young lads made the debut and under 18 players played, but it certainly wasn't the priority at that point. We've not got a big enough squad to cope with that competition at that stage because we had a lot of injuries and a lot of issues. And then the last minute winner against Fleetwood was like really hairs on the back of your neck stuff. And that led us into Gary coming in. And again, I've got a lot to be grateful for with Gary taking on an assistant manager who was in for the job as well. I think that says a lot about his character, that he's confident and brave enough to recognise that I'm the kind of person he would like to work with, knowing that I'm trustworthy, and I'm sure that people at the club would have spoken to him about my character. And so far, so good. I've loved working with him. There's a really good balance about how we do things. We're obviously taking over from one of the most successful managers in the club's history, and not just the manager, but Wayne as the assistant, Dan Green as the coach, even Connor as the S&C. There's some really, really good people that have left. And you have to pick it up and you have to run with it. And I think, although we've had some disappointing results, I think there's been a generally good feel about the place. The fact that the home games have been sold out has been unreal. We've had a couple of last-minute winners. A last-minute equaliser hurt us against Sheffield Wednesday, but the performance was excellent. Yeah. And I know over Christmas, I think we've really hit a bit of a flow. And I think that sends us into 2023 on a high, but knowing that there's a lot of work to be done.
And just on that, can I just say that I live near Oxford, so I was particularly grateful for that result, bearing in mind where we've got our free weekend because of the FA Cup and the game.
Well, they spanked us twice, didn't they? So they were deserving of coming out the other side of one. So,
can I just say thank you for that? You talked about Barnsley and you've talked about the ethos. And do you know what? As somebody that's been involved with the trust since its inception, and we talk about our ethos, and I know that we, I'm independent, by the way. This is independent, this podcast. I am so pleased that you've turned around and said, we take time. It's about ethos. And I know that, reading your going through your backstory there, right, of your trials and tribulations, and I'm guessing sometimes commuting from your parents' house probably when you were younger, or were you in hostels?
Well, to be honest, things have changed a bit. I think when I first moved to Sheffield, I moved into a host family, and they, after about 6 months, they fell pregnant and had to kind of ask if we'd leave. And I was 17, and myself and the player that I was living with chose to go and rent. That was. Okay. You look back now and you think 17-year-olds renting their own place, paying their own bills, cooking their own meals is a bit different to what it is today. But it wasn't really a question to us. It was just, let's just get on with it and go and do it. So then when I went to Notts County, I bought my first place and moved in and did it from there. So I've been quite lucky that I was independent and mature enough to look after myself. Yeah. Got some life skills along the way in terms of cooking and making sure everything's all right and you're living well. So yeah, in that sense, I've been fortunate. And I think your playing career, when you're in the middle of it, it's the be all and end all. And it seems like there's nothing else out there. It's everything. Yeah. But the fact is that if you're lucky, and I was really lucky, I played for the best part of 20 years, but if you're lucky as a player, you'll play for 15 and you've got the rest of your life after that to figure something out. So for me to have experienced so much adversity early in my career and throughout my playing career, it's put me in a good place to try and give back and help players now from a coaching and management point of view.
Yeah. Now, that's great to hear. And it's interesting you talk about now being a number two. I'm going to say number one, number two. I don't see that you've got a particular preference to it. You don't mind. You enjoy being a number 2 by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I've loved it, but I didn't. This season's moved so quick. To go from head of coaching to under 18s to caretaker manager to assistant, it has happened in the space of about 6 months. So I always saw myself as the manager and wanted to do that. And I've got longer term ambitions at some point to go back into it. But the opportunity to work with Gary and do what we do came up. And I have been really surprised at how much I've enjoyed it. Gary's excellent at allowing people their say and taking on opinions and then going away and making the final decision. And he's very, very good at making sure that we know and he knows and the fans know that the book stops with him. So there's already been a couple of things that I would say have happened where, I've put my advice forward. I think we should do this. He's agreed and gone for it, and it's not worked. And at no point has he ever turned around and gone, well, come on, you said we should have done that.
Yeah.
He's to the point where almost too far the other way. I'd say, look, Gary, we did that. We made that decision together, me, you, and Dave Perkins. We agreed on it. It didn't work. That's all of us. But he understands football. He understands that when it comes down to it, it will boil down to him. And so it's been an absolute pleasure working with somebody who is open to your own insights, empowers you to go and coach and empowers you to go and have your say with the players, but he's also upstanding enough and has his own values powerful enough to say, well, I'm the manager, it stays with me. And that I think is testament, regardless of how his tenure here goes on for and how successful it is, that says a lot about the guy himself.
And it's positive and great to hear you say that. Now, and you'll notice from this interview that I know we've got a transfer window that's presently open. I wasn't planning to ask you any direct questions related to the transfer window. What goes on tour stays on tour, let it happen, so to speak. I know some fans asked me to ask some questions, but I didn't think that was appropriate. So what I will ask you is, I'm a 21-year-old lad. Right, I'm not having the best of times somewhere, right? And we've pinpointed that I could be useful to Exeter City as a player. What's the sales job like? What do you guys normally do? Do they come down quietly? Do you take them to the training ground? How would you approach it? I know it's different. Everybody's different.
Yeah, no, I think you've got someone like Marcus Flitcroft who's excellent at identifying that type of profile. The type of players that we sign will range in age and experience, but a 21-year-old who's fallen out of favour elsewhere is a really good example, because that's the kind of player that, if you look at someone like Randall Williams a few years ago when Matt and Wayno, he became almost like Wayne Carlisle's project player, where he played in a similar position. Wayno built a relationship with him. The coaching staff as a whole worked with him regularly. You don't need to sell it, because you've got a history of young players either ready-made through our academy or younger players that have come in and they've been developed and worked with, and they've gone on for bigger and better things. And, Exeter is a development club. There's no hiding or shying away from that. That's what we do. And it's about building players up to get to their potential, getting the value out of them while you do that.
Yeah.
Being proud that you were part of their journey and that they move on to a higher club, higher wages, etc. Because we can't compete with the vast majority of League One clubs financially, and never mind anything else.
Yeah.
But that's part and parcel of what you do. So for any young player, if Exeter come knocking, you've only got to Google it and realise how many similar kind of ilk of players have been through these doors, been worked with, played first team football, and then moved on again. So I don't think there's a sales pitch that's really needed. If a player is swayed by an extra couple of £100 here or there, then they're probably not what we want in the building.
Not the right person for us.
If a player wants to come here for all the right reasons, then we'll do everything we can on our side of it. And we know that they don't all work out. You don't get it perfect every time. But we've got a pretty good record of helping players. Like, again, some of these lads have been here since 9 and they're now playing 200 games in the first team. So we've got a very good record of highlighting local talent and helping them. we've also got a good record of recruiting and moving players on. And we'll get the odd one wrong, but it won't be through a lack of trying. And the attitude and the character of the player will always come first.
Do you know what? It's great to hear. And a little anecdote from me, true story. Ollie Watkins, I was at an England game with my family at Wembley. He came on as a sub, and I think we were the only people that actually stood up at that point and cheered our heads off, because we'd seen an Exeter City player come on as a sub playing for England. Well, I know he played for England a few times before that, but I think we'll always be like that. Do you know what? Yeah, I want to say thanks. I did say we'd be 20, 25 minutes. We've been a little bit over. So a couple of things I'm going to say to you. Good luck, Forest Green. I will be there. Good luck, Pompey. I believe there's going to be 1,200 to 1,600 Exeter fans there. If you haven't, can't remember if you've been there last time we went down, went huge numbers, but look at it on YouTube. We're going to be noisy. Look out for the Quad Pod flag, which is coming in the next couple of days for a little bit of advertising. This is going to come out in the next 10 days or so. Thank you for coming on, and it's really, really appreciated. And you're not having a weekend off, you said. You're going to...
No, the lads had a few days off after Oxford, so we're back in the swing of it. So they'll work hard tomorrow. They'll have a day or two after that, and then we'll be on the build up into Forest Green. So they earned a little bit of time to rest and recuperate, and now it's nothing everlasting football in terms of once you've won, it's finished. You're on to the next, and so we move on from Oxford and we're on to Forest Green.
Appreciate you coming on. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Anytime, mate.
Hi, this is a quick trust section related to the show. Normally we'd do this with City Mick, but he's on his football fix. The meeting was really slightly better attended, actually. More people coming in online, which is always good to see, because it makes for a more interactive meeting. Although I have to say that the meeting from the trustees was super quiet, with only a few of them speaking. It was delayed slightly because Gary Caldwell appeared, the club manager, and he came to talk to the trustees. And I think that's probably leading on to the meeting next week, where as a club the CEO presents to us, the supporters, the performance of the club, so we can ask questions and they can explain a few things that are going on. So in terms of the trust, I know they're looking forward to putting in a vote to the supporters. Yes, we will vote on things related to betting. I'll let them talk about that. I've mentioned the finance. They're also talking about a 20th anniversary football shirt. And as you'll appreciate, it was a fairly limited update because it was just before Christmas. So I'll let us move on to the next part of the show. Take care. Hi, it's the end of the show, and we do have to always get to this point. I'd like to say thank you to Sam in Bedford, our younger contributor who asked the first question, which went out to Kevin Nicholson. Thanks to Kevin for coming on, and it's really great to see that he has a super relationship and speaks very highly of Gary Caldwell, now working as assistant. We need to obviously please share and subscribe on YouTube. Feel free to comment on all the channels. I'd like to thank Manchester John for his kind comments and the ratings that we received from him and 4 other people of a 5 for the show. Also, I'd like to thank the Liverpool fan that came on and has now decided to support Exeter as his second club, which was always one of the main objectives of what we were trying to achieve. Look out for our Twitter account. Please link up to that. Look out for the fun facts that come out, and also look out for our new little bit of fun head to head from a ownership perspective, which will come out just before the matches. Just an aside, before we forget, there was no update on the trust person. He was democratically voted on joining the club board. I believe that will probably come out on Thursday. And for those that haven't seen, please come out and go to the meeting Thursday, look on the relevant channels around the club and get yourself involved. That's what this club is all about. In terms of getting involved, if you've got ideas to share, please put them on our socials, Twitter, etc. If you think you're a special guest to come on and to join the community, then please do let us know. Thanks for listening. It means a lot. Don't forget, football is a beautiful game, and let's just enjoy it. Up the city.